Hello, this is Shane from Ozone Water Systems, and today I want to do a demonstration, go over the updates in our IDEC FT1A all-in-one PLC that we use for our standard ozone generators. We've been using the same program for quite some time now. I think probably a few years now. We've been on version 2.5. If you have one of these generators, if you go into the settings screen, you'll see in the bottom corner, you'll see the version number there in the bottom corner. This one's 2.7. 2.6, you might be a few random ones around. We had that just for kind of some experimental features or one-offs for various customers that needed a couple of specific features. But we've implemented a lot of new updates, some of which are pretty exciting. And I wanted to go over all these changes and show you what you can expect if you get this. And it is backwards compatible, so if you've got an existing one of our generators, you can get an update on a USB, files we can send you that you can put on a USB and then do an update just with a USB stick. So let me get into the screens. We'll kind of go through each screen and show you what you can see that's different. The previous videos we have on the channel, I can't remember which version that is, but it is a much older one, and there was some updates that were since that video was produced. But in the videos there was some overlays to kind of explain things that had changed. But so this one will go through the screens and focus mostly on the 2.7 updates. This is the home screen that gives you a basic overview of the system parameters, current state of things. Not a lot's been done here, just some minor text fixes, font sizes, things like that, very minor, but just kind of cleaning up the interface a little bit. So we'll back out here, we'll go to the menu control screen. So one thing you'll immediately notice on this screen, if you're familiar with it, is the local HMI button here. What we've added is some additional functionality for external control. But what this HMI button does, if you hold that button down for us 1 second, it switches where it says EXT HMI. And what that does is it tells the system that you're in external HMI mode. You've got another touch screen or interface elsewhere that is going to allow you to set these control modes. So now when you're in that mode, these buttons no longer work because you're in external control mode. It's waiting for those values externally. To get it back out of that mode, you hold that button down again. We have added via Modbus, you can do the ambient reset via Modbus externally as well. So this is a latching thing. If you get an ambient fault, it latches. So generally you have to come here, the operator's got to touch this to reset it if you get an ambient fault. You can now do that over Modbus externally if you need to. Obviously use caution with that. You don't want to reset that if there's possibility that there's an ozone leak. You need to address that first, obviously, but we'll go back to the menu. Alarm list, this has not changed. If you're familiar, again, with the system, you know this screen changes dynamically based on how your system is configured, you know, what features you have enabled. If it's a water-cooled versus air-cooled generator, that'll change that. But this is unchanged for 2.7. Same with the alarm log. Nothing's changed there. It's the same. Get into the settings. In this screen, this is also unchanged except for the version number. This is where you'll see what software version number you have. Bulk of the changes that you'll see are in the factory screen. So you click that and you've got to enter your password using the cursors. We went over this in the other video. I'm not going to give you the password in this video. You'll have to contact Ozone Water Systems support to get that password for your system. But you essentially just move the cursor around with these arrows. When you get on a value, you hit enter to enter that. So you know I just entered a P. Let's just hypothetically, you know, PWD would be like password, you know, PWD for password. And then once you entered whatever your password was, you navigate down to the bottom, go over to OK, and hit enter, and it would let you in. It didn't let me in because that's obviously not the password, but so let me enter the password, and then we'll get back to you. Okay, so now that you've entered the password, we're into the factory screens. One difference you'll see on this screen is the additional MB remote off button. So what this button does, previously we already had Modbus control. So Modbus read-only values are always available to you. You can see those via Modbus all the time. If you want to control via Modbus, you have to turn the Modbus on. That allows Modbus control inputs to come in. What this one does is when it's in this current state, and you put the unit in remote mode, so there's off, there's local, purge, and remote, or the different PID modes for ORP or DO3 takes the place of the remote mode. But if you're in remote mode with that button off, it uses the physical hardwired 4 to 20 input for the remote level control. If you turn this on, now it's going to expect that analog 0 to 100% value via Modbus. So you can send that over to the network. If you still want to use the hardwired input, you can leave that off and use the hardwired 4 to 20 input from that. Now we'll navigate to the Factory 2 screen. Two things you got here on this screen that are different. The way that the system has always been, if you're making Ozone and you remove the Ozone run command, either with the physical input or the Modbus remote run, if you're in Modbus mode, it will, and you shut that off, it'll stop making Ozone, but it will continue to flow gas indefinitely. What this button, and this is the, if you put it on CONT purge, that's continuous purge, that is essentially the same thing as it's always been. If you want this different, if you push that button and it says purge delay, now it's going to, when you remove the run command, it will purge for the predetermined purge off delay that's set in the settings screen. Generally 30 seconds or a minute, minute and a half, whatever you want to set that at. Now when I remove the run command, it's going to just purge for, let's say I have it set for 30 seconds. It's going to purge for 30 seconds and then it's going to go into standby and there will be no more purge. It'll just be ready for the next run command. As soon as you give it another run command, then the gas flow will restart, and then after the Ozone start delay, then it will start making Ozone again. The BF cycle, that is the backflow cycle. It basically just, we've integrated the backflow valve into the generator now. We do also offer, of course we always have for years, an external backflow prevention panel. But with this intelligent system that we have and all the control functionality we have in our generators, we've implemented that valve directly in to have off of an output from the PLC. So what it generally looks for in normal operation, as long as we've got gas pressure in the cell within the window of range, if it's, let's say this, like this one here, for example, is a 20 PSI unit, if the gas pressure is between 18 and 22 PSI, it will allow that backflow valve to open so that we can let gas flow go out to the process. If pressure gets out of that range, either it's too low, we don't want to risk any backflow coming back into the system, it will shut the backflow valve, preventing any possibility for gas coming back. Also, when you shut the system down, previously the electronic regulator would shut, but the discharge could be open. So if somebody left an injector pump on, it could continue to draw a vacuum on the generator and pull down put a vacuum on the cells, and even draw gas through the electronic regulator, because it's not really a check valve. It would allow them to pull a vacuum. So now with the way the backflow valve is implemented integrated into the generator, when you turn off the system, the regulator shuts off to stop to drop gas pressure. The outlet backflow valve will now close to completely isolate the system. What the backflow cycle valve will do, let's say a scenario where you're running, something happens downstream at your Venturi and you've got too much pressure in that tank, the check valve fails or something, and you've got greater than the ozone cell pressure in your contact vessel or injector pump outlet, something like that, and the pressure gets out of range on the high side. Well, that's going to shut that backflow valve and lock that pressure in the system. In order to purge that out, you address the issue that caused the pressure to get out of range in the first place, and then what this button does, it will just basically do one complete cycle of the backflow valve. It'll open it all the way, and then it'll let it shut all the way. It takes about approximately a minute, minute and a half to fully open and fully close, and then that will let you flush out any moisture or pressure in the system or any backflow that may have gotten into the system. It would let you purge that out. What that does is it allows you to get that situation cleared out without dismantling any plumbing, pulling the lines off around the backflow valve, and it simplifies that. So you don't have to get your tools out. You can just hit that button and it'll run it through that cycle. When you push the button, it will flash the yellow light while it's in that cycle, and that'll cause the backflow valve to fully open and fully close at one time. When it's done with that cycle, the light will stop flashing. Some of the minor things that were also done kind of in the background that most people probably never saw, there was a few these text fields that were sized incorrectly, and they may not show all the digits on the values, so those have been cleaned up and tidied up. And if we move on to the factory number 3 screen, this is essentially unchanged. We moved a couple things that were here to the next screen. Factory 4. This is the new addition. This button here that says Power Loss Control Reset. That is the same way as it was before, where if you get a power loss, let's say you're in local control or remote mode and you're running and making ozone and there's a power outage, when power comes back on, the control mode will be set to off, and it'll require operator to come and reset the system, put it back into ozone mode. If it makes sense for your application or your site, obviously you got to evaluate that, make sure it's a safe scenario or situation for it to start making ozone again. If you press that button, now the text changes from power loss control retain. That makes your power mode or your control mode retentive. So if you have it in remote mode, when the power goes out, when the power comes back on, it will go back right to remote mode and restart where it left off with all the same settings. And ozone will restart. Obviously you've got to make sure that any other companion systems or associated systems to the ozone and pumps and things like that also come back on, otherwise it won't have anywhere for the ozone to go. So you need to make sure you've made accommodations for all those things so that this mode makes sense. It wouldn't make sense for this to come on and try to make ozone if other things weren't on that needed to be on. And we go to the Factory 5 screen. This is a new addition. You now have the ability to adjust the IP address, the subnet, and the gateway for your Ethernet network right from the touchscreen. You no longer have to have either software on your laptop or back out of this into the hardware setup screen in the background. You can enter your information here to match it up to your control system or your network. Make sure you put in all 3 addresses and then hit the save button. Just note, got some text here. Make sure that you've got ozone off when you do this, because when you hit save, it is going to reboot the PLC to reset the IP addresses. So turn ozone off, put it in standby, make your change, and hit save. One last feature that we're pretty excited about, and this has been, as we get more and more of these units out that are aging and older, there's a potential memory loss with your data registers and all your settings. These settings that came through are all these different values that are particular for your system, and all these buttons and stuff. These are data registers that got to be retained so that when it turns back on, it knows how your system is supposed to be configured. If it loses its memory, all those go blank and the system won't operate, and you've got to plug all those in manually previously. One situation where that would happen, if we built a new system, shipped it to your site, and you weren't ready for it, and it sat on a dock or in a warehouse for 6 months or a year, the internal battery, without any power on it, can potentially go low enough to cause these registers to be erased. Program would still be on there, but all the data registers for your set point would go away. So we've built in a memory manager application for this. Allows you to put a USB stick in the back of the unit. It's a very small file, so what we are including with the new ones is a 256 megabyte, not gigabyte, megabyte USB stick. You want to make sure that's left in all the time. When you get everything set to your factory settings that you like, you just come in and you hit the backup button, and that will take all those data registers and it'll save them to that USB stick. And if you ever need to recover that information, you just come back to this screen, you can hit recover. Now what the OK does, programmed in a intelligent way for the unit to know or suspect if you've lost your memory. It monitors a certain data register that is required for the system to operate properly, and it will know if you power the unit up and that value is at a 0, meaning that it lost its memory, it will automatically take you to this screen. I'll demonstrate that shortly, but it'll take you to this screen and you'll have a red X here indicating that it suspects you've lost your memory. If you get that screen, it now gives you the option to immediately just hit the recover button and restore all that data. The only thing you will lose is the date and time. Obviously, we can't record that, from 6 or 8 months ago or whenever you last hit the backup button. So you don't lose. You'll have to plug in your date and time separately, and you'll also lose the Ozone generator runtime. We do keep a running hour meter of how much runtime on the generator, but you will lose that data if the memory does go bad. So let me demonstrate what will happen if you if the memory is lost and you power it up. Let's say the power goes out, or it's been out for some time. I'll turn the power off. So when we power it back up, there's power. So you can see it immediately took you to the memory manager screen, and you've got a red X in here. So the red lamp indicates possible memory loss. So all I got to do when I'm on this screen now, if I want to check and go look through the values, obviously I can. I will need to use the menu button, because if you got to this screen when you first booted up, since you haven't been to any screens yet, you can't hit the back button. It will try, but since you haven't been anywhere, it'll just bring you back to this screen, because this is the first screen you encountered. If I'm on the screen and I know I've got good data on my USB stick, all I've got to do is hit the recover button. Take it a few seconds, because it has to retrieve that data off the USB stick and then write it to the registers. If it's successful, you'll get an OK light. Now if I go back into those factory settings, now I'm back into the factory screens, you can see I've got all my data back. So that really expedites getting back online if you do have a memory outage. Otherwise, you've got to come back in here. Hopefully you happen to record these values so that you can come back in here and plug them back in if you're not sure what they are, because these will all be zeros. There'll be 0 here, 0, 0. None of this will be set. So you'll notice if you get into that mode previously, you were on the menu screen, it wouldn't let you go to the home screen, it wouldn't let you go to the settings screen or the alarm list screen, because those screens are dependent on what control mode you're in. If you want, what kind of feed gas monitoring you're doing, whether you're in remote mode, ORP for PID for ORP or PID for DO3, it requires those modes to know which home screen you're using or which control screen you're using, which alarm list, all these things. The only thing you could do really is go into factory, and then you'd have to manually enter all those things. So now we've eliminated that as a possibility with the new memory manager function. So we're pretty excited about that. I think that's going to help a lot of people out and simplify things. Also, you can take that USB stick, and once you've done the backup, you could retrieve that file off of there, store that off the system on your own hard drive it's just a CSV data file. So a really small little file that has those values in it that you could store elsewhere, just to have that backup copy. There's our 2.7 updates. I hope you like it. If you're interested in getting that update, give our office a call. We can work out the details to get your system updated to that. Any new systems from here on out, this is in March in 2023 that I'm making this video. Any new system that's being shipped after today, basically, is going to have 2.7 built into it. So if you're getting a newer system, it will have that in it. And these things will apply to you. But if you do have an older system, you want to get it updated, our technicians may be updating systems as they go travel and go to sites. You may be getting software updates when you get your service done. So if you're interested in that and the technician hasn't offered it, you might mention it to them. If you've seen this video and you're interested in getting some of these new features, ask your technician about that when they're out on site, and they can hook you up with that. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, or contact our offices at the number below, 480-421-2400, or email the company and we can help you out. Always here to help. Thank you. Have a good day.